The ceramic mug slipped from my fingers in what felt like slow motion, the steaming dark liquid arcing through the air like a terrible, inevitable promise. I watched, frozen in horror, as it descended directly toward the lap of the man in the expensive charcoal suit seated at table 12. The crash was spectacular. Coffee exploded across his thighs, steam rising from the fabric as he jerked backward with a sharp intake of breath. The mug shattered on the floor, porcelain shards scattering like tiny white daggers across the scuffed linoleumine tiles of Rosie's diner. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." The words tumbled from my mouth as I lunged forward with a handful of napkins, my exhausted brain only belatedly registering that reaching toward a stranger's lap might not be the most professional response to this disaster. He caught my wrist before I could make contact, his grip firm, but not painful. "I've got it," he said, his voice low and controlled despite what had to be scalding discomfort. That voice. My eyes, which had been fixed on the spreading coffee stain, traveled upward, past the expensive suit now ruined by my clumsiness, past the broad shoulders that seemed vaguely familiar, past the strong jawline dusted with precisely trimmed stubble, to eyes I had spent 7 years trying to forget. Dylan Morrison looked back at me, recognition dawning in those storm-gray eyes that had once looked at me like I was his entire world. Before he disappeared without a word, before he left me standing in the rain outside his apartment with an overnight bag and a heart that would take years to piece back together. "Diana," he breathed, my name sounding like both a question and an answer. The diner spun around me. The familiar smells of coffee, grease, and disappointment that had become my daily atmosphere suddenly felt suffocating. My hand, still caught in his grip, trembled visibly. "I need to clean this up," I managed, pulling away from his touch and dropping to my knees to gather the broken ceramic. My hand shook as I picked up the larger pieces, and I was dimly aware of other customers turning to stare at the commotion. "Diana, wait. Table 7 needs their check, Diana." Marjorie's voice cut through the moment, sharp and impatient. My manager stood behind the counter, arms crossed over her ample chest, her expression making it clear that my personal drama was significantly less important than the diner's schedule. I scrambled to my feet, fragments of mug cupped in my apron, unable to meet Dylan's gaze. "I'll send someone to finish cleaning up, sir. Again, I'm so sorry about your pants." "Sir?" I'd called him sir. The man who used to whisper my name in the dark, who knew every freckle on my body, who had promised me forever and then vanished like smoke. I fled toward the kitchen, my sensible shoes squeaking on the linoleum, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Behind me, I heard Marjorie's artificially sweet voice offering Dylan complimentary dry cleaning and a free meal, her tone a stark contrast to the one she used with her staff. The kitchen's heat hit me like a wall. Pete, our cook, looked up from the grill, his weathered face creasing with concern. "You all right, kid? You look like you've seen a ghost." Ghost was closer to the truth than he knew. I dumped the broken mug into the trash with shaking hands and leaned against the metal counter, trying to remember how to breathe normally. 7 years. 7 years of rebuilding myself from the girl who had loved Dylan Morrison with every fiber of her being. 7 years of learning to stand on my own, of working double shifts at this diner and taking night classes, of slowly accepting that the man I'd planned a future with had simply decided I wasn't worth an explanation. And now he was sitting at table 12 with coffee-stained pants and those same eyes that could still make my knees weak. "Diana, table 7. Marjorie's voice came through the order window, cutting and impatient. I grabbed the check from the printer and forced my legs to move. Table 7 was a regular Mrs. Chen, who came in every Tuesday for the meatloaf special and always left exactly $3 as a tip. I delivered her check with a smile that felt like it might crack my face and avoided looking toward table 12 where Dylan still sat. "Don't look. Don't look. Don't." I looked. He was watching me, his ruined suit jacket draped over the chair beside him. his white shirt slightly damp where the coffee had soaked through. Someone, probably Chloe who worked the other section, had brought him a towel. But he wasn't using it. He was just sitting there, his intense gaze following my every movement across the diner floor. My foot caught on a chair leg. I stumbled, barely catching myself on the edge of a booth. The elderly man sitting there looking up from his newspaper with raised eyebrows. Heat flooded my cheeks as I mumbled an apology and continued toward the kitchen, feeling Dylan's eyes burning into my back. This was not how I'd imagined seeing him again. In my mind, during those rare moments when I allowed myself to fantasize about it, I was always put together, successful, laughing with friends at some upscale restaurant when he'd walk in and see what he'd lost. I was never exhausted from a double shift, my blonde hair escaping from a messy ponytail, my uniform smelling like French fries and desperation. "Your admirer hasn't left," Chloe whispered, as she brushed past me to grab an order. She was 22, pretty, and still believed that working at Rosie's was just a temporary stop on her way to better things. I'd been her age when I started here. 7 years later, I was still wearing the same ugly brown uniform. I didn't need Chloe's observation to know Dylan was still there. I could feel his presence like a physical weight, pulling at my awareness even as I tried to focus on refilling coffee cups and delivering plates of uninspired American food to customers who never really saw me. Invisibility had become my superpower over the years. I could move through spaces barely noticed, just another tired waitress in a forgettable diner. But Dylan's gaze made me hyper-visible, every clumsy movement magnified, every insecurity exposed. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out during a brief lull, my stomach dropping at the text from my landlord. "Rent was due yesterday. I need payment by Friday or we'll need to discuss other arrangements." Other arrangements meant eviction. It meant looking for a new place with first and last month's rent I didn't have. It meant the careful financial house of cards I'd built threatening to collapse around me. I shoved the phone back in my pocket and pressed my palm against my lower back, where a dull ache had settled hours ago and refused to leave. 12-hour shifts at 5 months pregnant probably wasn't what my doctor would recommend, but my doctor also probably assumed I had options. "Diana." Marjorie appeared at my elbow, her voice pitched low but urgent. "The gentleman at table 12 is asking for you specifically." My mouth went dry. "I'm sure Chloe can help him. He asked for you." Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "Is there a problem? Because if there's a problem with you and a customer, I need to know about it." A problem. That was one way to describe Dylan Morrison, the man who had shattered my heart and then disappeared without a trace, only to reappear in a coffee-stained suit 7 years later. "No problem," I forced out. "I'll take care of it." I approached table 12 with the measured steps of someone walking toward their own execution. Dylan had cleaned up somewhat. The towel Chloe had brought him now discarded on the table. Up close, I could see the changes 7 years had carved into him. He was broader, his shoulders filling out his suit with an authority he hadn't possessed at 23. His face had hardened, losing the softness of youth, his jaw more defined, his eyes carrying shadows I didn't remember. But it was still Dylan, still the man who had traced constellations on my skin and promised me the moon. "Can I get you anything else?" I asked, my voice professionally neutral, my gaze fixed somewhere over his left shoulder. "Look at me, Diana." It wasn't a request. The command in his voice made my eyes snap to his face before I could stop myself. Something flickered in his expression, satisfaction maybe, or vindication. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly. The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "I work here. What are you doing here?" "I meant in the city. Last I heard, you'd moved back to your hometown." Last he heard. As if he hadn't been the reason I'd considered leaving, as if his abandonment hadn't sent me spiraling into a depression that made even getting out of bed feel like an insurmountable task. "Plans change," I said shortly. Did you need something else, or can I bring you your check? His jaw tightened. We need to talk. No, we really don't. I turned to leave, but his hand shot out, catching my wrist just as it had earlier. The touch sent electricity up my arm, a physical reminder of all the ways he'd once made my body sing. Diana, please, just 5 minutes. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back up to his face. You had 7 years of minutes, Dylan. You chose not to use them. I get off at 11, and I'm exhausted, and I have about 1,000 things to do that don't involve rehashing ancient history with someone who couldn't even be bothered to say goodbye. I pulled away from his grip, and this time he let me go. But as I walked away, I heard him say, I'll wait. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of mechanical efficiency. I delivered food, cleared tables, smiled until my face ached, all while acutely aware of Dylan's presence. He ordered coffee, then another, and another, sitting at table 12 like he had all the time in the world. At 10:45, Marjorie finally cut me loose. You look like death, Diana. Go home. Chloe can handle closing. I didn't argue. I collected my tips, a depressing $43 for 12 hours of work, changed out of my uniform in the tiny employee bathroom, and gathered my coat and bag from my locker. All the while, I told myself I would leave through the back exit, that I wouldn't give Dylan Morrison the satisfaction of waiting for me. But when I pushed through the front door into the cool October night, my traitorous feet carried me toward the figure leaning against a sleek black car parked at the curb. Dylan straightened as I approached, his ruined suit somehow still looking more expensive than anything in my closet. Thank you for coming. I didn't come for you, I said. I just needed to tell you in person to leave me alone. I can't do that. The certainty in his voice made something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't the Dylan I'd known, the boy who'd been gentle and uncertain and sweet. This was someone else, someone harder, someone who expected obedience when he spoke. Why? I demanded. Why now, after 7 years of silence? He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the harsh streetlight. Because 7 years ago, leaving you was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I did it to protect you, Diana. But circumstances have changed. Protect me from what? From me. From my life. From choices I made that would have destroyed you. He took a step closer, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with coffee. But you're already in danger now, whether you know it or not. And I'll be damned if I let anything happen to you. My laugh was bitter. That's rich, Dylan. You left me broken and alone, and now you're playing the protective hero. I know I hurt you. You don't know anything. The words burst from me. 7 years of pain and anger finally finding their voice. You don't know what it was like waking up to find you gone. You don't know how many times I called your number until it was disconnected. You don't know how long it took me to stop jumping every time someone walked into a room, hoping it was you coming back. I was breathing hard now, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Dylan's face had gone pale, but he didn't look away. You're right, he said quietly. I don't know, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to explain. Why should I? Because you're in trouble, and whether you want my help or not, I'm the only one who can keep you safe. The word sent a chill through me. What are you talking about? Dylan glanced around the empty street, his posture suddenly tense. Not here. Let me take you home and I'll explain everything. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to walk away and never look back. But something in his expression, a genuine fear beneath the hardened exterior, made me hesitate. 1 hour, I finally said. You have 1 hour to explain yourself. Then I never want to see you again. He nodded, relief flickering across his face. Deal. He opened the car door for me, and I slid into the leather interior, The luxury of it, a stark contrast to my second-hand everything. As Dylan walked around to the driver's side, I caught a glimpse of something beneath his jacket. A flash of metal that made my heart skip. A gun. Dylan Morrison was carrying a gun. What the hell had happened to the gentle boy I'd loved? And what kind of danger was I in? The interior of Dylan's car smelled like leather and something darker, something that reminded me of danger and expensive mistakes. I pressed myself against the passenger door, maintaining as much distance as possible in the confined space, my fingers clutching the door handle like a lifeline. Dylan slid into the driver's seat with practiced ease, his movements controlled and efficient. Nothing like the slightly awkward boy I remembered, who used to fumble with his keys and apologize for every minor inconvenience. This Dylan moved like a predator, certain of his place in the world. "Where do you live?" he asked, starting the engine. The car purred to life, the sound so smooth and quiet it was almost obscene compared to my 15-year-old Honda with its rattling exhaust. I rattled off my address in Queens, watching his jaw tighten as he processed the neighborhood. It wasn't the worst part of the city, but it was far from good. The kind of place where sirens were background noise, and you learned to keep your eyes down and your business to yourself. "You've been living there long?" he asked, pulling smoothly into traffic. 3 years. I didn't elaborate. Didn't mention that it was the 4th place I'd lived since he'd left, each one a downgrade from the last as my financial situation deteriorated. Didn't mention the broken lock on my building's front door, or the neighbors who played music until 3 in the morning. We drove in silence for several blocks. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, trying to calm the racing of my heart. The gun beneath his jacket seemed to pulse with presence, a constant reminder that I was sitting next to a stranger wearing a familiar face. "You saw it," Dylan said finally, not a question. "The gun?" I kept my voice level. "Kind of hard to miss." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I can explain." "You've been saying that a lot, but I haven't heard much explaining yet." He exhaled slowly, and I recognized the gesture from years ago, the way he used to collect his thoughts before difficult conversations. Some things, apparently, hadn't changed. "After I left you, I got involved with some people. People who operate outside the law." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I work for an organization that handles various enterprises, some legitimate, some less so." "You're a criminal." I stated it flatly without inflection. "I prefer businessman with flexible ethics." "I prefer not to sugarcoat things." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You never did. It was one of the things I loved about you." Loved. Past tense. The word hit me harder than it should have, considering I was supposed to hate him. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you get involved with these people?" His expression darkened. "Because I needed money fast, and they were willing to pay for someone with my particular skills." "What skills?" "You were studying architecture." "I have a gift for numbers, for seeing patterns. Money laundering, investment schemes, financial manipulation. It turns out I'm very good at making dirty money look clean." There was no pride in his voice, just a weary acceptance. "They offered me more money than I could make in 10 years of legitimate work. I took it." I processed this, trying to reconcile the Dylan I'd known, the one who used to sketch buildings on napkins and talk about designing structures that would outlast us both, with this man who casually discussed financial crimes. And what does any of this have to do with me? Everything. He took a turn onto my street, somehow knowing exactly where he was going despite never having been here before. That observation sent another chill through me. The organization I work for has enemies, rival groups who would love to find my weaknesses and exploit them. I'm not your weakness anymore, Dylan. You made sure of that 7 years ago. That's what I thought too. He pulled up in front of my building, killing the engine but making no move to get out. That's why I left. I realized that being with me put you in danger. So I disappeared. Made it look like we'd never meant anything to each other. I thought if I stayed away long enough, they'd forget about you. They who? He turned to face me fully, and the streetlight caught the harsh planes of his face. The Russians, mainly. There's a man named Viktor Kozlov who runs their operations in the city. He's been trying to get leverage over my boss for years. 6 months ago, one of his men spotted us together. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, spotted us together? We haven't seen each other in 7 years. I know. That's the problem. He reached into his jacket, and I flinched involuntarily. He froze, pain flickering across his features, before slowly withdrawing not a gun, but a phone. He pulled up a photo and handed it to me. The image showed me leaving Rosie's diner, my coat pulled tight against the cold, my expression tired. The photo was recent, taken maybe 2 weeks ago based on the coat I was wearing. But standing in the background, barely visible but unmistakably there, was Dylan. He wasn't looking at the camera, but at me. I've been watching you, he admitted quietly. For months, making sure you were safe, that no one from my world had made the connection. I was careful, or I thought I was. But Victor's men are good. They put it together. You've been stalking me. My voice came out hollow. I've been protecting you. That's the same thing. It's not. His voice hardened. If I'd been stalking you, I would have approached you, talked to you, made contact. I stayed away, Diana. I watched from a distance because I needed to know you were okay. But I never interfered. Until tonight. Tonight, when I dumped coffee on you. Tonight, when I realized that staying away wasn't protecting you anymore. Victor knows about you now. He knows I've been watching you, and that means he knows you matter to me. The casual way he said it, like it was fact rather than presumption, made anger spark in my chest. I don't matter to you. I'm someone you used to know. Someone you walked away from. Is that what you really think? He leaned closer, and I could see flecks of gold in his gray eyes. Do you think I would have spent 7 years making sure you were safe if you didn't matter? Do you think I would have turned down promotions because they would have made me too visible, too easy to trace back to you? Do you think I wanted to watch you struggle, to see you working yourself to exhaustion in that diner, and not be able to help? Then why didn't you? The words burst from me, raw and aching. If you cared so much, why did you let me think you were dead? Why did you let me grieve for you? Because grief ends, Diana. People move on from grief. They heal. But if I'd stayed, if I'd let you love me while living this life, you would have been in constant danger. They would have used you against me. And I couldn't let that happen. I wanted to scream at him, to rage against the arrogance of making that choice for me. But a traitorous part of my mind understood the logic, even as I hated it. So what's changed? I asked instead. If the danger is the same, why approach me now? Because now they know anyway. My staying away accomplished nothing except keeping us both miserable. And because... He stopped, his jaw working. Because what? Because I saw you with him. The words hung in the air between us. I stared at Dylan, confusion warring with a dawning realization. You mean Carlos? I asked. Carlos was a regular at the diner, a sweet guy who worked construction and always left generous tips. He'd asked me out twice, and I gently refused both times. The man who walks you to your car every Thursday night, who brings you coffee from the good place down the street, who looks at you like you're the only thing worth looking at in this entire city. There was something raw in Dylan's voice, something that sounded almost like jealousy. It would have been flattering if it wasn't so infuriating. Carlos is a friend. He's nice to me. Novel concept, I know. He wants to be more than friends. That's none of your business. It is if he's going to put you in danger by association. I laughed, the sound bitter. The only person putting me in danger by association is you, Dylan. Carlos is just a guy who's kind to me. You're the one involved with criminals and carrying a gun. He had the grace to look chagrined. Fair point. I reached for the door handle, suddenly desperate to escape the confines of the car and his presence. I've heard your explanation. We're done. Diana, wait. No. I turned back to face him, letting him see all the anger and hurt I'd been carrying for 7 years. You don't get to waltz back into my life and claim you were protecting me. You don't get to be jealous of a man who shows me basic kindness. You don't get to decide what dangers I can handle. You had your chance, Dylan. You chose to leave. I chose to keep you alive. You chose for both of us without giving me a voice. That's not protection. That's control. I shoved the door open, stepping out into the cool night air. Don't follow me. Don't watch me. Don't protect me. Just leave me alone like you've been doing for 7 years. I slammed the door and started toward my building, my hands shaking with adrenaline and suppressed emotion. I heard his car door open behind me. I can't do that, he called after me. I spun around. Why not? Because Victor knows about you now. That photo I showed you? One of his men took it. They're watching you, Diana. And if they think hurting you will hurt me, they won't hesitate. Then make them think I don't matter to you. Make them think I'm nobody. It's too late for that. He walked toward me, his movements predatory and graceful. They've done their research. They know we were together 7 years ago. They know I've been watching you. They probably know more about your daily routine than you do. Fear curled in my stomach, cold and nauseating. What do they want? To send a message, to prove they can get to anyone I care about. He stopped a few feet away, his expression grave. There's going to be a meeting in 3 days. Victor and my boss negotiating territory. If it goes well, the threat might pass. But if it goes badly, I become a target. Yes. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite my coat. What am I supposed to do? Let me protect you. Let me keep you safe until this blows over. How? By what? Hiding me somewhere? I have a job, Dylan. I have bills due. I can't just disappear. I'll take care of everything. Your rent, your bills, whatever you need. I don't want your money. This isn't about pride, Diana. This is about survival. I looked up at my building, at the broken front door and the flickering light in the 3rd-floor hallway. I thought about my landlord's text, about the rent I couldn't pay, and the eviction that loomed. I thought about Carlos and his kind eyes, about whether knowing me had put him in danger too. Why should I trust you? I asked quietly. Because despite everything, despite all the ways I've hurt you, I've never lied to you. He took a step closer. I left to protect you. I stayed away to protect you. And now I'm asking you to let me protect you one more time. For how long? However long it takes. I studied his face, looking for the boy I'd loved beneath the hardened exterior of the man he'd become. I found glimpses, in the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, in the vulnerability beneath his confident posture. I need to think about it, I said finally. You have until Friday. That's when Victor's deadline expires. What deadline? Dylan's expression darkened. The one where he either gets his proof that I can be controlled through you, or he makes an example out of both of us. The casual way he spoke about violence and death made my skin crawl. This was his world now, a place where people were leverage and violence was currency. "I need to go inside," I said, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. "Can I walk you up?" "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "No, Dylan. I need space to process this. All of this." He nodded slowly. "Okay. But I'm not leaving you unprotected. There's someone watching your building tonight. One of my people. You won't see him. But he's there." "That's not creepy at all," I muttered. A ghost of his old smile appeared. "I've missed your sarcasm." "Well, you shouldn't have left." The smile faded. "No, I shouldn't have." We stood there in the awkward silence. 7 years, and 1,000 unspoken words between us. Finally, I turned and walked toward my building, feeling his eyes on my back until I disappeared inside. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, my legs heavy with exhaustion and emotion. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and marijuana, familiar scents that usually brought comfort in their mundanity. Tonight, they just made me feel trapped. Inside my tiny apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, sliding down to sit on the floor. My hands moved instinctively to my stomach, to the small curve that was barely visible beneath my loose clothing. 5 months pregnant with a secret I hadn't told anyone, not even Carlos with his kind eyes and generous tips. Certainly not Dylan, who didn't know that our last night together before he vanished had left me with more than just a broken heart. I hadn't planned to tell him. Had convinced myself that he didn't deserve to know, that I could raise this child alone just like I'd learned to do everything else alone. But now, with Russian mobsters apparently watching my building and Dylan carrying a gun and talking about protection, the calculus had changed. If I was in danger, my baby was in danger too. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would call him and tell him the truth. Tonight, I just needed to breathe and pretend, for a few more hours, that my life wasn't spiraling into chaos. I pulled myself up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. I couldn't see anyone watching, but I felt the weight of observation nonetheless. Dylan's car was still parked at the curb, a dark shadow in the streetlight. I watched it for a long moment before the driver's door opened and he stepped out, tilting his head back to look up at my window. Even from 3 stories up, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. Could feel the pull of history and chemistry and all the complicated emotions I'd spent 7 years trying to bury. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Lock your windows. And Diana, sleep well. I'll keep you safe." It could only be Dylan. Somehow he'd gotten my number, though I shouldn't be surprised. He'd probably had it all along, had probably known everything about my life while I'd known nothing about his. I locked the windows as instructed, then collapsed onto my secondhand couch, too tired to even make it to my bed. My last thought before exhaustion claimed me was that tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I would tell Dylan Morrison that he was going to be a father. And God help us both. I woke to sunlight streaming through my threadbare curtains and the nauseating smell of someone frying fish in a neighboring apartment. My neck ached from sleeping on the couch, and for a blissful moment, I forgot about everything that had happened the night before. Then I saw Dylan's text still glowing on my phone screen, and reality came crashing back. I hauled myself up, one hand pressed to my lower back where a persistent ache had settled. 5 months pregnant meant constant discomfort, though I'd gotten good at hiding it. The morning sickness had mostly passed, replaced by exhaustion that settled into my bones and refused to leave. In the bathroom, I studied my reflection. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. My blonde hair hung limp around my shoulders, and my face looked pale and drawn. Not exactly the image of strength and independence I wanted to project when I told Dylan he was going to be a father. My phone rang, Carlos's name appearing on the screen. I answered, grateful for something normal and uncomplicated. Hey, Diana. Just wanted to check if you got home okay last night. I saw you leaving with some guy in an expensive car. Of course he had. Carlos noticed everything. One of the qualities that made him such a good friend. And probably would have made him a good boyfriend if I'd been capable of opening my heart to anyone after Dylan. I'm fine. Just an old friend. Looked like more than a friend from where I was standing. His tone was casual, but I caught the undercurrent of concern. You sure everything's okay? No, I wanted to say. Nothing is okay. I'm pregnant and broke and apparently being watched by the Russian mafia, and the father of my baby just reappeared after 7 years carrying a gun. Everything's fine, I lied. Thanks for checking in. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long moment before pulling up Dylan's contact information from the unknown number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I needed to tell him. Needed to warn him that if he was going to protect me, he was protecting 2 people now. But the thought of actually saying the words made my throat tight with anxiety. Before I could overthink it further, my phone rang again. Dylan. We need to meet, he said without preamble. This morning, something's happened. My stomach dropped. What kind of something? Not over the phone. There's a coffee shop on Madison and 42nd. Can you be there in an hour? Dylan, I have work. Call in sick. This is important. The command in his voice sparked my temper. You don't get to order me around. A pause. When he spoke again, his voice had softened. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm asking you, Diana. Please. It's urgent. The please did it. I agreed and hung up, immediately calling Marjorie to tell her I had a stomach bug. She sounded skeptical, but agreed to have Chloe cover my shift. An hour later, I pushed through the door of an upscale coffee shop that served lattes, costing more than my hourly wage. Dylan sat at a corner table, his back to the wall, positioned so he could see both the entrance and the rear exit. Even relaxed, he radiated controlled tension. He stood as I approached, and I noticed he'd changed clothes. Gone was the coffee-stained suit, replaced by dark jeans and a fitted black sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked dangerous and beautiful, and I hated that I noticed. Thank you for coming, he said, pulling out a chair for me. I sat, accepting the coffee he'd already ordered. Decaf vanilla latte, extra foam. My exact order from 7 years ago. The fact that he remembered made my chest ache. What happened? I asked, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. Dylan's expression darkened. Carlos Martinez. He's your friend, right? Dread pooled in my stomach. What about him? He was beaten up last night. 3 men jumped him outside his apartment building. Broke his jaw and 2 ribs. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the table. Oh my God, is he? He'll survive. He's in the hospital now. Dylan's jaw was tight. They left a message with him, for you. What message? And they told him to stay away from what doesn't belong to him. Dylan's eyes met mine, storm gray and furious. Victor is sending a message. Anyone close to you is a target. Nausea rolled through me, and this time it had nothing to do with pregnancy. Carlos, sweet Carlos, who had never done anything but show me kindness, was in the hospital because of me, because of my connection to Dylan. I need to see him, I said, standing up so fast I knocked my chair backward. Dylan caught my arm. That's exactly what they want. They're watching you, Diana. If you go to the hospital, they'll know Carlos matters to you. It'll make him an even bigger target. I don't care. He's my friend, and he's hurt because of me. He's hurt because of me, Dylan interrupted, his voice hard. Because I couldn't stay away from you like I should have. Because I was selfish, and thought I could watch over you from a distance without consequences. I stared at him, seeing the guilt etched in every line of his face. For the first time since he'd reappeared, I saw beneath the controlled exterior to the man underneath. He was blaming himself for all of this. "This isn't your fault," I said quietly. "Isn't it?" He laughed, the sound bitter. "I brought this world to your doorstep. Everything that's happening now is because I couldn't let you go. You did let me go, 7 years ago. I left you. That's not the same thing." His grip on my arm softened, his thumb unconsciously tracing circles on my skin. "Letting you go would mean not thinking about you every day, not watching from a distance to make sure you were okay, not memorizing your coffee order and the route you take home and the way you bite your lip when you're nervous." His words made something crack open in my chest. All the hurt and anger I'd been carrying suddenly mixed with something more complicated, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Dylan, I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you. I know I destroyed what we had. But please, Diana, let me fix this. Let me keep you safe." I looked into his eyes and saw the boy I'd loved underneath the dangerous man he'd become. Saw the same intensity that had drawn me in 7 years ago, the same certainty that I was worth protecting. And I realized I couldn't tell him about the baby. Not now, not like this. If he knew I was pregnant with his child, his protective instincts would go into overdrive. He'd lock me away somewhere, take away what little agency I had left. I needed to maintain some control over my own life, especially now. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll let you help, but on my terms." Relief flooded his features. "What terms?" "I'm not going into hiding. I'm not quitting my job or disappearing from my life. Whatever protection you're offering, it has to work around my reality, not replace it." Dylan's jaw tightened, clearly wanting to argue, but he nodded. "Agreed. What else?" "Honesty, complete honesty. No more secrets, no more watching me without my knowledge. If you're going to be in my life, even temporarily, you're going to be honest about it." Something flickered in his eyes. "Guilt, maybe." "Okay. And you have to tell me everything, about your work, about Victor, about why you really left 7 years ago. I deserve the whole truth." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "The whole truth is uglier than you think. I can handle ugly. Can you?" He leaned forward, his expression intense. "Can you handle knowing that I've done things that would make you look at me differently? That the man you loved doesn't really exist anymore? The man I loved stopped existing the day he disappeared without a word," I said. "Tell me about the man you are now." Dylan sat back, running a hand through his dark hair. The gesture was so familiar, it made my heart ache. "Where do you want me to start?" "The beginning. Why did you really leave?" He took a deep breath, and I could see him gathering his thoughts, deciding how much to reveal. "Do you remember my brother?" The question surprised me. "Marcus, your older brother who was killed in a car accident. You talked about him sometimes. It wasn't a car accident." Dylan's voice went flat, emotionless. "He was murdered by Viktor Kozlov's people." I sat back, shock stealing my breath. "What?" "Marcus worked for the same organization I do now. He was good at it, too good. He started skimming money, thinking he was clever enough to get away with it. Victor found out." Dylan's hands clenched into fists on the table. They made it look like an accident, but I knew. I knew what really happened. "Dylan, I'm so sorry. I went to Victor's people looking for revenge. I was 23 and stupid, and thought I could take them down from the inside." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, they recruited me, told me I could either work for them or end up like my brother, so I started doing jobs for them, small stuff at first. But I was good with numbers, good at making their money disappear and reappear somewhere clean. I became valuable. And me? I asked quietly. Where did I fit into all this? You were my normal, my reminder that there was still good in the world. His eyes met mine, raw and vulnerable. Every moment I spent with you, I was lying. I was already deep in Victor's organization, already doing things I couldn't take back. And then one day, Victor called me into his office. He paused, his jaw working. I waited, my heart pounding. He had photos of us, of you leaving your apartment, walking to class, having coffee with friends. He said he admired my work, but worried I might have distractions. He suggested I eliminate those distractions if I wanted to continue advancing in the organization. Horror washed through me. He threatened to kill me. Not directly. Victor's too smart for that. He just showed me the photos and said how unfortunate it would be if someone I cared about got caught in the crossfire of our business. The message was clear. Stay with you and put you in danger, or leave and keep you safe. So you left. So I ran like a coward. I couldn't bring myself to see you one last time. Couldn't trust myself not to tell you everything and put you at even more risk. So I just disappeared. I absorbed this, trying to reconcile his actions with his explanation. Part of me understood his logic, even appreciated the impossible position he'd been in. But another part, the part that had spent 7 years healing from his abandonment, raged against his choice. You should have trusted me, I said. You should have given me the choice. I know. The simple admission hung between us. I've regretted it every day since. But I can't change the past, Diana. All I can do is try to keep you safe now. Why is Victor threatening me again? You said you stayed away for 7 years. Why does he suddenly care? Dylan's expression turned grim. Because I made a mistake. 6 months ago, my boss, a man named Thomas Reeves, decided to expand into territory Victor considers his. It's caused tension, brought us close to war several times. Victor's been looking for leverage over Thomas's key people, and he remembered you. But we haven't been together in 7 years. Doesn't matter. He knows I still care. That's enough. Dylan reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I won't let him hurt you, Diana. Whatever it takes. The warmth of his hand sent electricity through me, muscle memory from years ago when his touch meant safety and love. I should have pulled away, maintained the distance I needed to protect my heart. But I was tired of being strong alone, tired of carrying my burdens without help. There's something I need to tell you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Dylan's expression shifted to concern. What is it? I opened my mouth, the confession right there on my tongue. I'm pregnant. You're going to be a father. But before I could speak, Dylan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his whole body went rigid. We need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Victor's men. They're outside. He stood, pulling me to my feet. There's a back exit through the kitchen. Stay close to me. Fear spiked through me as Dylan guided me toward the rear of the coffee shop, his hand firm on my lower back. The barista looked up in surprise as we pushed through the employee door, but Dylan's expression must have warned her not to question us. We emerged into a narrow alley. Dylan pulled me close against the wall, his body shielding mine as he scanned the space. I could feel his heart hammering against my back, could smell the clean scent of his cologne mixed with the sharper edge of adrenaline. My car's 2 blocks west, he murmured against my ear. When I say run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Understand? I nodded, my own heart racing. This was real. This was actually happening. The abstract threat had become concrete danger in the space of a heartbeat. Run, Dylan commanded. We burst from the alley, Dylan's hand gripping mine as we raced down the sidewalk. I heard shouting behind us, heavy footsteps pounding pavement. My lungs burned and my legs protested, but fear kept me moving. Dylan yanked me left into another alley, then right onto a side street. His car appeared ahead, sleek and dark and promising safety. He unlocked it remotely, pulling the passenger door open and practically shoving me inside before racing around to the driver's side. The engine roared to life, and we peeled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of two large men in dark suits emerging onto the street behind us, but Dylan was already turning the corner, putting distance between us and them. "Are you okay?" he asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I nodded, unable to speak past the fear clogging my throat. My hand had moved instinctively to my stomach, a protective gesture I didn't realize I was making until I saw Dylan's eyes flicker down to the movement. His expression shifted, confusion warring with something else. Understanding, maybe. Or suspicion. "Diana," he said slowly, his voice dangerous soft. "Why did you just protect your stomach like that?" I froze, my hand still pressed against the small curve hidden beneath my loose sweater. This wasn't how I wanted to tell him. Not in a car fleeing from Russian mobsters, not with fear and adrenaline making my thoughts scattered and unclear. But his eyes had already traveled down to where my hand rested, had already cataloged the slight roundness that my baggy clothes usually concealed. I watched understanding dawn across his face, watched shock and disbelief, and something fiercer replace his controlled expression. "Diana." My name was barely a whisper. "Are you pregnant?" The question hung in the air between us, impossible to take back or deflect. I met his eyes, saw the desperate hope and fear warring in their gray depths. "Yes," I whispered. 5 months. The car swerved slightly as his hands tightened convulsively on the wheel. He pulled over abruptly, throwing the car into park on a quiet residential street. Then he turned to face me fully, his expression a storm of emotions I couldn't begin to parse. "Is it mine?" The question should have offended me, but I heard the desperate need in his voice, the hope that terrified him. "Yes." For a moment he just stared at me. Then he reached out slowly, his hand hovering over my stomach before looking up at me for permission. I nodded, and his palm settled gently over the curve of my belly. 5 months, he repeated, doing the math. So it happened before I left. Our last night together. I didn't know until after you were gone. His hand remained on my stomach, warm and possessive. "Why didn't you tell me? You could have found me, could have..." "Found you how, Dylan? You disappeared, changed your number, left your apartment. For all I knew, you were dead." Anger finally bubbled up through my fear. "And even when I found out you were alive, why would I tell you? You made it clear I didn't matter to you." "You've always mattered." "Then you shouldn't have left." The words exploded from me, 7 years of hurt and anger and grief finding their voice. Dylan flinched but didn't move his hand from my stomach. "You're right," he said quietly. "You're absolutely right. I made the wrong choice. And now we've lost 7 years we could have had together. But I'm here now, Diana. And I'll be damned if I let anything happen to you or our child." Our child. Hearing him say it made something crack open in my chest. All the months of carrying this secret alone, of planning to raise a baby by myself, suddenly felt less isolating. "Victor can't know," I said urgently. "If he finds out I'm pregnant with your baby, he'll use it against us." "I know." Dylan's jaw clenched. "Which means we need to move you somewhere safe. Today. Right now." "Dylan, no. I told you. I'm not going into hiding." "That was before I knew you were carrying my child. Everything's changed." "Nothing's changed, except that you know." I pushed his hand away from my stomach. I've been dealing with this pregnancy by myself for 5 months. I've been working double shifts and paying my rent and figuring it all out alone. I don't need you to swoop in and take over my life. You're not alone anymore. Yes, I am, because in 3 days or a week or whenever this threat passes, you'll go back to your dangerous life, and I'll still be here, raising our child by myself. That's the reality, Dylan. You can't protect us forever. He stared at me, something broken and desperate in his eyes. What if I could? What? What if I could protect you forever? What if I left the organization, disappeared with you somewhere Victor and Thomas and all of them could never find us? The offer should have filled me with hope. Instead, I just felt tired. You can't leave. You said it yourself. You're too valuable. They'd hunt you down. Let them try. And spend the rest of our lives running, raising our child in fear, always looking over our shoulders? I shook my head. That's not a life, Dylan. That's just a different kind of prison. He slumped back in his seat, defeat written across his features. Then what do you want me to do? I don't know, I admitted. I don't know what the answer is. I just know I can't keep living like this, afraid and dependent and powerless. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on both of us. Finally, Dylan started the car again. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere safe. We need to figure this out, and we can't do it while Victor's men are hunting us. He glanced at me. I have a place outside the city. Secure. No one knows about it except my most trusted people. Dylan. Just for a few days. Just until the meeting with Victor. Then we'll figure out a long-term solution. His hand found mine, squeezing gently. Please, Diana. For our baby, if not for me. Our baby. The words still felt surreal, hearing them from his lips. I looked down at our joined hands, at the familiar calluses on his palms, and the unfamiliar, expensive watch on his wrist. Dylan was both stranger and intimate, danger and safety wrapped into one impossible package. Okay, I said finally. A few days. But then we talk about a real solution, something that doesn't involve me being hidden away, or you being killed by mobsters. Deal. As we drove out of the city, leaving behind my apartment, and my job, and my carefully constructed independent life, I tried not to think about how easily I was giving it all up. Tried not to wonder if I was making the same mistake as 7 years ago, trusting Dylan Morrison to keep me safe. But this time, I wasn't just protecting myself. I had a life growing inside me, depending on me to make the right choices. And right now, the right choice was letting Dylan help, even if it terrified me to depend on him again, even if it meant risking my heart one more time on a man who had already shattered it once. Dylan's safe house was nothing like I expected. Instead of some dingy hideout or sterile apartment, we pulled up to a modest cabin nestled in the woods about 2 hours north of the city. Pine trees surrounded the property, their branches swaying gently in the late morning breeze, and a small lake glittered in the distance through the gaps in the foliage. "This is your safe house?" I asked as Dylan killed the engine. "Technically, it's just my house. The place I come when I need to remember I'm human." He glanced at me, something vulnerable in his expression. No one from the organization knows about it. Not Victor, not Thomas, not even my closest associates. It's mine alone. The intimacy of the admission wasn't lost on me. He was sharing something deeply personal, inviting me into a space he kept separate from his dangerous life. Inside, the cabin was warm and surprisingly homey. Exposed wooden beams crossed the ceiling, a stone fireplace dominated one wall, and comfortable furniture was arranged to take advantage of the view through large windows overlooking the lake. It felt like a different world from the luxury car and expensive suits, more like the Dylan I'd known 7 years ago. "There are 2 bedrooms upstairs," Dylan said, setting down the bag he'd insisted on packing from my apartment during a brief, tense stop. You can take whichever one you want. Thank you. I moved to the window, staring out at the peaceful landscape. It was hard to believe that just hours ago we'd been fleeing from armed men. How long have you had this place? About 5 years. I needed somewhere I could breathe, away from everything. He came to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. I used to imagine bringing you here sometimes, showing you the lake, cooking dinner in that kitchen, pretending we were normal people with normal lives. His confession made my chest ache. Dylan, I know I don't have the right to say these things. I know I gave up that right when I left. He turned to face me fully. But I need you to understand something, Diana. Not a day has passed in 7 years that I haven't thought about you. Not a single day. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered and difficult to rebuild. Actions matter more than words, I said quietly. You thought about me, but you stayed away. You watched me struggle but didn't help. Thoughts are easy, Dylan. It's the choices that define us. He flinched but didn't argue. You're right. So let me make different choices now. Let me prove I can be the man you deserve. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. Then honestly, I'm terrified. The admission seemed torn from him. I'm terrified that Victor will find this place, that I've put you and our baby in even more danger by bringing you here, that I'll fail to protect you again. Again? I failed you 7 years ago when I left instead of fighting for us. I won't fail you this time. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his expression darkening as he read the message. What is it? I asked. Thomas wants to meet. Tonight. He knows about you. Fear spiked through me. How? Victor probably told him, trying to create tension in our organization. Thomas doesn't like his people having vulnerabilities. Dylan's jaw clenched. I need to go see him, explain the situation. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Dylan, if he knows about me anyway, hiding me won't help. Let me meet him. Let me show I'm not some weakness to be exploited. He stared at me for a long moment. You're serious? Completely. I'm tired of being treated like a damsel who needs protection. If I'm going to be part of this situation, I want to face it head on. Something that looked like admiration flickered in his eyes. This is exactly why I fell in love with you. Your courage. Fell in love. Past tense again. The words shouldn't have hurt, but they did. Fine, he said finally. But we do this my way. You stay close to me. You don't engage directly with Thomas unless I signal it's okay. And if anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. Agreed? Agreed. The meeting was set for 8 p.m. at a restaurant in Manhattan. Back in the city we'd fled hours earlier. The drive back felt surreal, returning to danger we'd just escaped. Dylan was tense beside me, his hands tight on the wheel, constantly checking the rearview mirror. Tell me about Thomas, I said, trying to distract both of us from the mounting tension. Thomas Reeves, 62 years old, started as a loan shark in Brooklyn and built an empire over 4 decades. He's smart, ruthless, and values loyalty above everything. Dylan glanced at me. He's also the closest thing I have to a father figure, which makes this complicated. He won't hurt you? Not unless he thinks I've betrayed him. Then all bets are off. The restaurant was upscale, the kind of place with a dress code and a maitre d' who looked down his nose at anyone without a reservation. Dylan had called ahead, and we were immediately escorted to a private room in the back. Thomas Reeves sat at a table set for 3, a glass of bourbon in front of him. He was smaller than I expected, barely 5'8", but he radiated authority. Silver hair was combed back from a face lined with age and experience, and his dark eyes assessed me with unnerving intensity as we entered. "Dylan," he said, his voice carrying a trace of an Irish accent. "And this must be the famous Diana." "Mr. Reeves," I said, extending my hand. He took it, his grip firm. "Please, sit. I've ordered dinner for us." We sat, and I felt Dylan's hand find mine under the table, squeezing reassuringly. Thomas noticed the gesture, his expression unreadable. "So," Thomas said, leaning back in his chair. "Victor Kozlov seems to think my best financial analyst has a weakness. He's been making noise about testing that theory. What do you have to say to that, Dylan?" "Diana isn't a weakness, sir. She's someone I care about who's been dragged into our business through no fault of her own." "And the baby?" Thomas's eyes flicked to me. "Victor's sources say she's pregnant. Is it yours?" I felt Dylan stiffen beside me. "Yes." Thomas was quiet for a moment, swirling his bourbon. "Congratulations are in order, then, though the timing is unfortunate." "I didn't plan this, Mr. Reeves." "I'm sure you didn't, but plans and reality rarely align in our world." Thomas turned his attention to me. "Diana, tell me, what do you think of our Dylan here?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm sorry?" "It's a simple question. The man who abandoned you 7 years ago has reappeared, claiming to protect you from dangers he himself brought to your door. What do you think of him?" I glanced at Dylan, who gave a barely perceptible nod. Permission to be honest. "I think he's scared," I said carefully. "I think he made choices he regrets, and now he's trying to fix them. I think he's dangerous and secretive and probably not good for me." I paused. "But I also think he's genuine in wanting to keep me and our baby safe. And right now, that matters more than the past." Thomas studied me, a small smile playing at his lips. "You're smarter than I expected. Most civilians crumble when confronted with our world. You're holding your own." "I've had practice being underestimated." He laughed, the sound genuine. "I can see why you fell for her, Dylan. She's got spine." "She does," Dylan agreed quietly. Dinner arrived, and we ate, while Thomas questioned me about my background, my work, my plans for the future. It felt less like an interrogation and more like a grandfather getting to know his grandson's girlfriend, which made it somehow more unsettling. Finally, over dessert, Thomas set down his fork and looked at Dylan seriously. "Here's my position. Victor is pushing for war over territory disputes. The meeting in 3 days is our last chance to avoid bloodshed. If he knows about Diana and the baby, he'll use them as leverage." "I won't let him touch her," Dylan said firmly. "I know you won't, which is why I'm going to propose something unconventional." Thomas turned to me. "How would you feel about attending the meeting with Victor?" "What?" Dylan's voice was sharp. "Absolutely not. Hear me out. Victor thinks Diana is a weakness. But if she attends the meeting, shows she's not afraid, it demonstrates strength instead of vulnerability. It takes away his leverage. It also puts her directly in danger." "She's already in danger," Thomas said bluntly. "At least this way, she's in danger where we can control the situation." Dylan looked at me, conflict written across his face. "Diana, you don't have to do this. But I was thinking about Carlos in the hospital, about the men who chased us through the city, about the baby growing inside me who deserved better than a life lived in fear." "I'll do it," I said. "Diana, I'll do it on one condition." I looked at Thomas. "I want protection for Carlos Martinez, my friend who was beaten by Victor's men. And I want your word that if this goes wrong, if something happens to me, Dylan won't be punished for it." Thomas regarded me with new respect. "You negotiate like someone who's done this before. I'm a waitress who's been stiffed on tips more times than I can count. You learn to advocate for yourself." I met his gaze steadily. "Do we have a deal?" "We do." He extended his hand, and I shook it. "Your friend will have protection starting tonight. And Dylan won't face consequences for your choices." Dylan's hand tightened on mine almost painfully. "This is insane. You're both insane." "Perhaps," Thomas said. "But it's the best option we have. Victor respects courage. If Diana walks into that room unafraid, it changes the entire dynamic." After dinner, Thomas left us with instructions to meet at his office the morning of the meeting for briefing. Dylan and I walked to his car in tense silence. "You shouldn't have agreed to that," he said finally, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "I had to." "No, you didn't. You could have let me handle it. Like you handled it 7 years ago when you left without telling me why." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I'm not a China doll, Dylan. I can make my own choices." He spun to face me, frustration and fear warring in his expression. "You're carrying my child. Do you understand what it would do to me if something happened to you? Do you understand what it's been doing to me? Living in fear, watching my friend get hurt because of me, feeling powerless while men with guns decide my fate." I stepped closer to him. "At least this way, I have some control. Control is an illusion in this world. Then I'll take the illusion over feeling helpless." We stared at each other, the tension between us electric. Then Dylan's hands came up to cup my face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "I can't lose you again," he whispered. "I can't." "You never really had me to lose," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Didn't I?" His thumb traced my cheekbone. "You're having my baby, Diana. That means something, whether you want to admit it or not. It means we made a mistake one night 7 years ago. Is that really what you think? That our child is a mistake?" The question pierced through my defenses. I placed my hand over his where it rested against my cheek. "No. This baby is the only thing I'm certain about. Everything else is just confusion." "Then let me make one thing clear." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. "I love you. I've loved you for 7 years, and I'll love you for 7 more, and 7 after that. I know I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to earn them back." His words unraveled something inside me, all the careful walls I'd built to protect my heart suddenly feeling fragile and insufficient. "Dylan, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." He pressed a kiss to my forehead, chaste and tender. "Let's get you back to the cabin. You need rest." The drive back was quieter, the earlier tension replaced by something more complicated. I dozed off somewhere around the halfway point, exhaustion finally catching up with me. I woke as Dylan lifted me from the car, cradling me against his chest like I weighed nothing. "I can walk," I protested sleepily. "I know. Let me do this anyway." He carried me inside and up the stairs to one of the bedrooms, laying me gently on the bed. I expected him to leave, but he sat on the edge of the mattress, his hand coming to rest on my stomach. "Can I feel?" he asked softly. I nodded, and he slid his hand under my shirt, his palm warm against my skin. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the baby kicked, a strong movement against his hand. Dylan's face transformed, wonder replacing the hardness I'd become accustomed to. "That's our baby." "That's our baby," I confirmed. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my stomach that made tears spring to my eyes. "I promise you," he whispered to the baby, "I'll keep you and your mother safe, whatever it takes." I ran my fingers through his dark hair, overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment. This was what I'd imagined when I first found out I was pregnant, sharing this joy with the baby's father. I'd mourned the loss of this possibility for months, convinced I'd face pregnancy alone. Now Dylan was here, his hand on my stomach and tears in his eyes, and it felt like a dream I might wake from at any moment. "Stay with me tonight," I whispered. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone." He looked up at me, searching my face. "Are you sure?" "I'm not sure about anything anymore, but I know I don't want to wake up alone in a strange place." He nodded, kicking off his shoes and lying down beside me on top of the covers. I curled into his side, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Dylan?" "Yeah?" "I'm terrified." "Me too." His arms tightened around me, and I let myself pretend, just for tonight, that we were normal people with normal problems, that the baby growing inside me was conceived in love rather than a last desperate night before abandonment, that the man holding me wouldn't have to face down Russian mobsters in 3 days to keep us safe. Just for tonight, I let myself believe that maybe, somehow, everything would be okay, even if I knew it was a lie. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and Dylan's arm draped protectively across my waist. For a moment, I lay still, savoring the warmth of his body against mine, and the simple comfort of not being alone. Then reality crashed back, and with it came the memory of what lay ahead. 3 days until the meeting with Viktor Kozlov. 3 days to prepare for walking into a room full of dangerous men and pretending I wasn't terrified. Dylan stirred beside me, his arm tightening briefly before his eyes opened. When he saw me watching him, something soft crossed his features, a vulnerability I rarely saw. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning." We lay there in awkward silence, the intimacy of waking up together both familiar and strange after 7 years apart. Finally, Dylan sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I should make breakfast. You need to eat. For the baby." The casual domesticity of the statement made my chest ache. This was what I'd wanted 7 years ago. Lazy mornings and shared meals and someone who cared about whether I ate breakfast. Now I had it, but built on a foundation of lies and danger that could crumble at any moment. I followed him downstairs, watching as he moved efficiently around the kitchen, cracking eggs and brewing coffee with the ease of someone comfortable in this space. He'd decaffeinated for me, I noticed, touched by the consideration. "You're a better cook than you used to be," I observed, as he plated perfectly fluffy scrambled eggs. Lots of time alone means you either learn to cook or survive on takeout. I got tired of Chinese food. He set the plate in front of me, then hesitated. "Diana, about last night." "If you're going to tell me you didn't mean what you said, save it. I'm too tired for emotional whiplash." I was going to say that I meant every word, but I also know saying it doesn't fix anything. I need to show you, not just tell you. I took a bite of eggs, buying time to formulate a response. Then show me. Start by explaining how this meeting with Viktor is actually going to work. Dylan sat across from me, his coffee cup cradled in his hands. "The meeting is at a neutral location, a restaurant Thomas controls. Both sides will have limited security, no more than 3 people each. We'll discuss territory, revenue sharing, and try to reach an agreement that prevents open warfare." "And me? What's my role?" "You attend as my guest. You show Viktor that his attempts to leverage you against me won't work because you're not afraid. Your presence demonstrates strength, unity. And if he tries something anyway," Dylan's expression hardened. "Then Thomas's security team, who will be positioned throughout the building, will ensure you get out safely. I've also called in a favor from an old friend, someone who specializes in protection details." "Another criminal?" "Former Secret Service, actually. She left the agency to do private security, best in the business. The casual mention of having connections to former federal agents reminded me of how little I actually knew about Dylan's life. 7 years was a long time. Plenty of opportunity for him to build an entire world I knew nothing about. "What else should I know?" I asked. "Victor will try to rattle you. He'll make comments, implications, try to find your weak spots. Don't engage. Stay calm. Let me handle the conversation. I'm not good at staying quiet when someone's being an asshole." A ghost of a smile crossed Dylan's face. "I remember. You once told off your economics professor for suggesting women weren't suited for finance careers." The memory surprised me. I'd forgotten he'd been there for that, had walked me home afterward while I ranted about institutional sexism. It was a small thing, but it reminded me that we'd had real moments, real connection, before everything fell apart. "I still think he was wrong," I said quietly. "He was definitely wrong." Dylan reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "Victor will underestimate you because you're a civilian, because you're a woman, because you're pregnant. Use that. Let him think you're harmless while you observe everything. You're smart, Diana. You'll see things others miss." The confidence in his voice was unexpected. Most people in my life had treated my observations as background noise, barely worth acknowledging. Having Dylan not just listen but value my perspective made something warm bloom in my chest. We spent the rest of the morning in an oddly domestic routine. I took a long bath while Dylan made calls from his office downstairs. Then we walked around the lake, the autumn air crisp and clean, so different from the city's pollution. "I bought this land 5 years ago," Dylan said as we walked. "Had the cabin built the next year. It was supposed to be my escape plan eventually, the place I'd disappear to if I ever managed to get out of the organization." "Can you get out?" "In theory. Thomas has released people before, when they've earned enough money or done enough favors to buy their freedom." He picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. "But walking away means leaving behind everything you've built, everyone you know. It means looking over your shoulder forever, wondering if someone from your past will decide you know too much. Sounds lonely. It is. But not as lonely as staying in a life where you can't be yourself." He turned to look at me. I thought about it a lot, leaving. But I always pictured leaving alone, starting over somewhere new where no one knew my name. I never imagined I'd have a reason to stay. "Dylan, I'm not asking you to make any promises. I know I haven't earned that right. But knowing you're having my baby, knowing you're back in my life even temporarily, it changes everything. Makes me want things I thought I'd given up on." I wanted to ask what things, but before I could, his phone rang. He answered it, his expression shifting from relaxed to alert in an instant. "When?" he asked sharply. A pause. "I'll be there in 2 hours." He hung up, his jaw tight. That was Thomas. Victor moved the meeting up. It's tonight instead of 3 days from now. Fear spiked through me. Tonight? But we're not ready. He's doing it deliberately, trying to throw us off balance. Thomas wants us back in the city immediately. Dylan's hand found mine, squeezing reassuringly even though I could feel the tension in his grip. "We don't have to do this. I can tell Thomas you're not coming." The easy out was tempting. I could stay here in this peaceful cabin, pretend the dangerous world didn't exist for a few more hours. But Carlos was in the hospital because of me. Dylan was risking everything to keep me safe, and I was tired of being protected instead of being a participant in my own life. "No," I said firmly. "I'm going. I said I would, and I meant it." Pride flickered in Dylan's eyes. "Then we need to get you something to wear. Victor will judge everything about you, and I want you to walk in there looking like you belong." 2 hours later, I stood in a boutique in Manhattan while Dylan conferred with the store owner, an elegant woman named Margot, who seemed unsurprised by his request for an entire outfit suitable for a high-stakes business meeting with mobsters. "Try this," Margot said, handing me a midnight blue dress. "It's sophisticated, shows confidence without being provocative, and the cut will work with your figure." In the dressing room, I studied my reflection. The dress was beautiful, flowing over my small baby bump without emphasizing it, the color making my eyes look brighter. With the right shoes and jewelry, I would look like I belonged in Dylan's world instead of serving coffee in it. When I emerged, Dylan's expression shifted. His eyes traveled over me slowly, appreciation, and something deeper flickering in their gray depths. "You look incredible," he said quietly. "I look expensive. There's a difference." "You look like yourself, just in a different setting." He came closer, his fingers grazing the fabric at my shoulder. "You've always been beautiful, Diana. The dress just makes it harder for people to ignore." Margot discreetly busied herself with accessories while Dylan and I stood there, the tension between us thick enough to touch. I was acutely aware of his proximity, of the way his eyes kept returning to my lips, of the heat building in the small space between our bodies. "We should go," I said, my voice coming out breathier than intended. "The meeting is in 3 hours. We have time." But he stepped back anyway, creating distance that felt both necessary and disappointing. While Margot rang up the dress and accessories, Dylan received another call. I watched his expression darken as he listened. "Understood," he said finally. "We'll be careful." "What is it?" I asked when he hung up. "Victor knows you're coming to the meeting. He's making sure we know that he knows." Dylan's hand found the small of my back as we left the boutique. He sent a message through Thomas. He's looking forward to meeting the woman carrying my child. The emphasis on the last words made my skin crawl. How does he know about the baby? He has people everywhere, probably followed us to the doctor, or overheard a conversation, or bribed someone who knows. Dylan's jaw clenched. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that he's showing his hand early, trying to intimidate you before you even walk in the room. "It's working," I admitted. "That's what he wants. But here's what Victor doesn't know about you." Dylan stopped, turning me to face him on the busy Manhattan sidewalk. "He doesn't know that you worked 3 jobs to put yourself through college. He doesn't know that you stood up to your economics professor when he tried to make you feel small. He doesn't know that you've been surviving on your own, pregnant and alone, without asking anyone for help." "You know all that?" "I've been watching, remember? I know you're the strongest person I've ever met, even if you don't see it yourself." His hands came up to frame my face. "Victor will underestimate you because that's what men like him do. Use it against him." The conviction in his voice steadied something inside me. I nodded, trying to channel even a fraction of the confidence he seemed to have in me. The restaurant where the meeting was being held was called Augustino's, an upscale Italian place in Midtown. We arrived an hour early, and Thomas was already there with 2 of his security team, both large men in expensive suits, who looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. "Diana," Thomas greeted me warmly, though his eyes were assessing. "You look lovely. How are you feeling?" "Terrified and trying not to show it." He laughed. "Honesty. I like that. Victor will hate it, which makes it even better." He gestured to a tall woman with sharp features and alert eyes. "This is Sarah Chen, the security specialist Dylan mentioned. She'll be your shadow tonight." Sarah stepped forward, her handshake firm. "Ms. Reeves, I've positioned additional security throughout the building, and I'll be at the table next to yours. If anything goes wrong, I'll get you out. Trust me on that." Something about her calm competence was reassuring. "Thank you." "Victor will arrive in 15 minutes, Thomas continued. "He'll have 2 men with him, probably Ivan and Dmitri. Both are loyal but not particularly bright. The real threat is Victor himself. He's smart, calculating, and he'll try to find your pressure points." My baby, I said. That's my pressure point. Which is why we don't talk about the baby unless he brings it up first. Don't volunteer information. Don't react to implications. Stay calm. Stay composed. The 15 minutes passed in a blur of final instructions and nervous energy. When Viktor Kozlov walked through the door, flanked by two massive men, I felt Dylan tense beside me. Viktor was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of the brutal thug I'd pictured, he was refined, almost elegant. Silver hair, expensive suit, cultured voice with only a trace of Russian accent. He looked like someone's sophisticated grandfather, not a man who ordered beatings and threatened pregnant women. Thomas, he greeted warmly, extending his hand. Always a pleasure. Viktor, you know Dylan, of course. Of course, and this must be the famous Diana. Viktor's pale blue eyes settled on me, cold despite his smile. A pleasure to finally meet you, my dear. Dylan has told me so much about you. The lie was smooth, designed to create paranoia. Had Dylan talked about me? Was he in communication with Viktor that I didn't know about? I'm sure he hasn't, I said calmly, not rising to the bait. We only recently reconnected. But love has a way of surviving even the longest separations, doesn't it? Viktor took his seat across from us, his men positioning themselves nearby. I understand congratulations are in order. When are you due? 4 months, I said, keeping my hand away from my stomach through sheer force of will. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me make protective gestures. How wonderful. Children are such blessings. I have 3 grandchildren myself. The joy they bring is immeasurable. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, they also make us vulnerable. We would do anything to protect them, wouldn't we? I imagine most parents would, I replied evenly, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Dylan's hand found mine under the table, his grip tight. Thomas cleared his throat, redirecting the conversation to business matters, territory disputes, and revenue sharing. I listened while half my attention stayed on Viktor, watching the way he gestured, the moments when his mask slipped to reveal something harder underneath. He was performing, I realized. The grandfather routine, the cultured sophistication. It was all carefully constructed to make people underestimate the predator beneath. I'd seen the same thing in customers at the diner, wealthy men who treated servers like furniture, but expected deference and gratitude. Diana, Viktor said during a lull in the business discussion. What do you do for work? I'm a waitress at a diner in Queens. How humble. Quite a change from the life Dylan could provide you. His eyes flickered between us. Or perhaps that's what attracted you to him, the prospect of a better life? The implication that I was a gold digger was clear. Dylan started to respond, but I squeezed his hand, signaling him to let me handle it. Actually, I was supporting myself quite well before Dylan reappeared. I have a job, an apartment, a life I built on my own. I don't need anyone to provide for me. How very modern. Although I notice you're here, accepting his protection, wearing clothes he likely purchased for you. Viktor's smile was sharp. We all need someone eventually, my dear. The question is whether we choose wisely. I've learned to be cautious about who I trust, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Recent events have only reinforced that lesson. For the first time, something like genuine interest flickered in Viktor's eyes. You have courage. I can see why Dylan is drawn to you. He turned to Thomas. Perhaps we can find an accommodation after all. If Dylan is willing to be reasonable about the harbor district, I can be reasonable about other matters. The rest of the meeting proceeded with surprising civility. Terms were negotiated, boundaries established, and by the time dessert arrived, a tentative agreement had been reached. I began to relax slightly, thinking perhaps this would end without incident. Then Victor stood to leave, and as he passed our table, he paused beside my chair. "A word of advice, my dear," he said quietly, his voice pitched for my ears alone. "Men like Dylan, we live in darkness. We can pretend to be civilized, to want normal lives. But eventually the darkness always wins. For your child's sake, you might want to reconsider this arrangement." He walked away before I could respond, leaving me frozen in my chair. Dylan's hand tightened on mine. "What did he say?" he asked urgently. "Nothing important," I lied, though Victor's words echoed in my mind. The darkness always wins. Outside the restaurant, Thomas clapped Dylan on the shoulder. "Well done, both of you." Victor was impressed, which is rare. "He threatened her," Dylan said tightly, on his way out. "Did he?" Thomas's expression hardened. "What did he say?" I repeated Victor's words, watching both men's faces darken. "It wasn't a direct threat," I added, more like a warning. "Everything with Victor is a threat, just dressed in polite language." Thomas sighed. "But the deal is done. As long as both sides honor the agreement, Diana should be safe." "Should be." The qualifier hung in the air between us. Sarah appeared at my elbow. "Ms. Reeves, I'll escort you and Dylan to his car, standard precaution." We walked through the Manhattan evening, the city alive with its usual chaos. I was exhausted. Adrenaline crashed, leaving me shaky and drained. Dylan kept his arm around my waist, supporting me as we walked. "You did amazing in there," he said quietly. "The way you handled Victor, you didn't let him get to you." "He did get to me. I just didn't show it." "That's even more impressive." At the car, Sarah did a quick security check before nodding us inside. As we pulled away from the curb, I finally let myself relax, sinking into the leather seat with a shaky exhale. "Can we go back to the cabin?" I asked. "I don't want to be in the city tonight." "Of course. We'll stop by your apartment to grab anything else you need, then head north." The stop at my apartment was quick, Dylan insisting on coming up with me despite my protests. Inside my tiny space, he looked around with an expression I couldn't read. "This is where you've been living," he said quietly, taking in the second-hand furniture and peeling paint. "While I had the cabin and the safe houses and more money than I knew what to do with. I've managed fine." "You shouldn't have had to just manage. You should have—" He stopped, frustration evident. "I should have been here, helping you, supporting you." "You can't change the past, Dylan. We've been over this." "No, but I can change the future." He turned to face me, his expression intense. "Move in with me. Not here, not at the cabin, but somewhere in between. A place where you and the baby will be safe and comfortable. Let me provide for you both properly." The offer was tempting, so tempting it scared me. "That's a lot to ask." "I'm not asking for anything in return except the chance to be part of our child's life. And yours, if you'll let me." I looked into his eyes, seeing hope and fear and desperate sincerity. 7 years ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, older and more cautious, I knew better than to make promises I might not be able to keep. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "After everything settles, after we know Victor will honor the agreement, then I'll give you an answer." He nodded, though disappointment flickered across his features. "Fair enough." We gathered my things and headed back to the cabin. In the car, I dozed off again, exhaustion finally winning. I woke as Dylan carried me inside, his arms strong and steady beneath me. I said I could walk. I murmured sleepily. And I said, "Let me do this anyway." He laid me in bed, pulling the covers over me with surprising tenderness. I caught his hand before he could leave. "Stay," I whispered, "like last night." He hesitated only a moment before kicking off his shoes and sliding under the covers beside me. I curled into his warmth, my hand finding his and placing it on my stomach where the baby was kicking. "She's active tonight," I said. "She?" Dylan's voice was soft with wonder. "It's a girl?" "I don't know for sure. I haven't done the anatomy scan yet. But I have a feeling." His hand moved gently over my stomach, and the baby kicked again as if responding to his touch. "If it's a girl, I hope she's just like you. Strong and brave and impossibly stubborn. If it's a boy, I hope he's nothing like you," I said, but there was no heat in the words. Dylan laughed softly. "Fair enough." We lay there in the darkness, his hand on my stomach, and our breathing slowly synchronizing. This, I thought. This is what I wanted 7 years ago. Not the danger or the drama, but this simple intimacy, sharing the miracle of new life with someone who cared. "Diana?" Dylan's voice was quiet in the darkness. "Yeah? Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a second chance, even if you don't realize that's what you're doing. For being brave enough to face Victor. For carrying our baby and being strong enough to do it alone when I should have been there." Tears pricked my eyes. "You're here now. That's what matters." His arms tightened around me, and I felt him press a kiss to my hair. "I'll prove I deserve to be. I promise you that." As I drifted toward sleep, Victor's words echoed once more in my mind. The darkness always wins. But lying here in Dylan's arms, feeling our baby move beneath his hand, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. Maybe sometimes, love could be stronger than darkness after all. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. Dylan and I fell into a routine at the cabin that felt almost normal. Almost like we were a real couple preparing for a baby instead of two people bound together by circumstance and old feelings we were both afraid to examine too closely. He worked remotely most days, taking calls in his office while I read, walked by the lake, or prepared meals in the kitchen. We took turns cooking, and I discovered that Dylan had become quite good at it over the years. He made me laugh with stories about his early attempts that had resulted in near-kitchen fires and inedible disasters. At night, we slept in the same bed, his arms around me and his hand resting on my stomach. We didn't talk about what it meant, this intimacy without labels. It was easier to pretend we were just two people seeking comfort than to confront the complicated truth of what we were becoming. But beneath the domestic peace, tension simmered. Victor had honored the agreement so far, but Dylan remained vigilant, constantly checking in with Thomas and his security contacts. Carlos had been released from the hospital and was recovering well, with protection detail Dylan had personally arranged. My landlord had mysteriously agreed to forgive my back rent, and I suspected Dylan's intervention, though he denied it when I asked. I was sitting on the porch one afternoon, my hand on my growing belly, when Dylan's phone rang. I watched through the window as he answered it, saw his expression shift from relaxed to alarmed in an instant. He came outside, his face pale. "That was Thomas. We have a problem." My stomach dropped. "Victor?" "No, worse." He sat beside me, taking my hand. "Do you remember me mentioning my best friend, Leo Marchetti?" I searched my memory. "Vaguely. You talked about him sometimes, said he was like a brother." "He works for Victor, has for the past 3 years. Dylan's voice was tight. "Thomas just got intelligence that Leo has been feeding Victor information about our operations. About me. He's the reason Victor knew to look for you. The reason he knew about the baby. Leo's been spying on me for months." The betrayal in Dylan's voice was palpable. "I'm so sorry. There's more. Thomas wants to handle Leo permanently. He sees him as a threat that needs to be eliminated." Dylan's hands clenched into fists. "But Leo and I, we grew up together. We were friends before any of this, before the organizations and the violence. I can't just let Thomas kill him." What are you going to do? I'm going to meet with Leo first. Try to understand why he betrayed me. See if there's a way to resolve this without bloodshed. He looked at me, conflict written across his features. But I need you to stay here with Sarah. I can't risk bringing you anywhere near this. When are you leaving? Tonight. The meeting is tomorrow morning. He pulled me close, his arms tight around me. I'll be back as soon as I can, I promise. I wanted to argue, to insist on coming with him, but I could see the determination in his eyes. This was something he needed to do alone. That evening, I watched him pack a bag, my anxiety mounting with each item he added. When he reached for the gun I'd seen that first night, I couldn't stay silent. Do you really need that? He paused, his hand on the weapon. I hope not. But I've learned the hard way that hope isn't a survival strategy. Sarah arrived an hour later, a compact woman with intelligent eyes who immediately began a security sweep of the property. Dylan introduced us properly this time, though we'd met briefly at the restaurant. I'll keep her safe, Sarah promised Dylan. You have my word. He nodded, though tension radiated from every line of his body. At the door, he turned back to me, cupping my face in his hands. I love you, he said, the words urgent and raw. I know I don't have the right to say it, but I need you to know. Whatever happens tomorrow, I love you and our baby more than anything. Before I could respond, his mouth found mine in a kiss that was both desperate and tender. When he pulled away, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Come back to me, I whispered. We need to talk about a lot of things, but I need you to come back first. I will. I promise. Then he was gone, and I was left alone with Sarah and mounting dread. The next morning crawled by with agonizing slowness. Sarah tried to distract me with conversation, but I couldn't focus on anything except Dylan. Where was he? Had he met with Leo? Was he safe? My phone rang just after noon. Dylan's name on the screen made relief flood through me. Are you okay? I answered immediately. I'm fine. Listen, the meeting with Leo, it's happening now. But Diana, there's something you need to know first. His voice was strained. Leo claims he had a good reason for spying on me. He says there's something I don't know. Something about why I left you 7 years ago. What do you mean? He says Victor didn't just threaten you back then. He says there was more to it, something I was never told. Dylan paused. Diana, I think someone's been lying to me for 7 years. And I think I know who. Before I could ask what he meant, I heard shouting in the background, followed by a gunshot that made my blood run cold. Dylan, I screamed into the phone. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart hammering so hard, I thought it might burst from my chest. Sarah was immediately at my side, her hand on my shoulder. What happened? I don't know. There was a gunshot, and then the line cut out. I was shaking, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. We need to go there. We need to help him. Ms. Reeves, I can't take you into a potentially active shooting situation. It's too dangerous. I don't care. He could be hurt. He could be dying. My voice broke on a sob. Sarah's expression softened. Let me make some calls. I have contacts who can check on the situation, but you need to stay here where it's safe. I wanted to argue, to fight, but a sharp pain in my abdomen stopped me cold. I gasped, my hand going to my stomach. Diana, what's wrong? I don't know. It hurts. Another pain, stronger this time, made me double over. Something's wrong with the baby. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She helped me to the couch, her phone already dialing. I need an ambulance at the Morrison property. Pregnant woman, approximately 6 months along, experiencing abdominal pain. The ambulance arrived within 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. As the paramedics loaded me into the vehicle, all I could think about was Dylan. Was he alive? Was he hurt? Would he even know I'd been rushed to the hospital? At the emergency room, doctors examined me while I tried to explain about the stress, the phone call, the gunshot. They hooked me up to monitors that showed the baby's heartbeat, strong and steady despite my panic. "The baby's fine," the doctor assured me. "You're experiencing Braxton Hicks contractions, likely brought on by stress. But we want to keep you overnight for observation." I nodded numbly, relief about the baby mixing with terror about Dylan. Sarah stayed with me, fielding calls and trying to get information about what had happened at the meeting. It was nearly midnight when Dylan finally appeared in my hospital room doorway. He was disheveled, his shirt torn and a bandage on his left arm, but he was alive. Whole. I burst into tears at the sight of him. "Diana, God, Diana!" He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling me into his arms. "I'm so sorry. My phone was destroyed in the fight and I couldn't call. I came as soon as I heard you were here. The baby is fine. We're both fine." I pulled back to look at him, my hands framing his face. What happened? I heard a gunshot, and then nothing. Dylan's expression darkened. Leo tried to shoot me, but not because he wanted to kill me, because he was trying to save me. I don't understand. It was Thomas. The words came out bitter and angry. 7 years ago, when Victor showed me those photos of you and told me to eliminate my distractions, I went to Thomas for help. He's the one who told me the only way to keep you safe was to disappear, to make it look like I'd abandoned you. He convinced me it was the only option. But it wasn't? No. Leo found out months ago that Thomas and Victor have been working together all along. The rivalry, the territory disputes, it's all been theater. They've been splitting profits behind the scenes while playing their organizations against each other. Dylan's hands were gentle on my face despite the fury in his voice. Thomas wanted me isolated, focused only on work. He knew if I had you, I might start questioning things, might want out. So he engineered the whole thing. Horror washed through me. 7 years. We lost 7 years because of his manipulation. I know. And I'm going to make him pay for it. Dylan's voice was cold, hard. But first I need to know something. Diana, I've been in love with you for 7 years. I left you to protect you. And it was the worst mistake of my life. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again. Not ever. So I need to know, is there any chance you could forgive me? Could love me again? I looked into his eyes, seeing the boy I'd fallen for and the man he'd become, flawed and dangerous, and desperately sincere. 7 years of hurt warred with the feelings that had been growing over the past weeks, the realization that despite everything, I'd never stopped loving him. I never stopped, I whispered. I tried to. God knows I tried. But you don't stop loving someone just because they leave. You just learn to live with the ache. Relief and joy transformed his features. Then let me spend the rest of my life making up for the ache. Marry me, Diana. Not because of the baby, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Because you're the only good thing I've ever had, and I was an idiot to walk away the first time. You're proposing to me in a hospital room? I'm proposing to you anywhere you'll listen. I know it's crazy. I know we have 1,000 things to figure out. But I love you, and I want to build a life with you. A real life. Away from Thomas and Victor and all of this. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. I'm leaving the organization. Leo and I, we have enough evidence to bring down both Thomas and Victor, to walk away clean. We can start over somewhere new, raise our baby in safety. What about the danger? The revenge? Thomas won't be in a position to take revenge. The evidence we have will put him away for the rest of his life. And Victor, once he realizes Thomas played him too, he'll be too busy dealing with his own problems to worry about us." It sounded too good to be true, too simple after all the complication. But looking into Dylan's eyes, I saw certainty and hope and love that had survived 7 years of separation. "Yes," I said, the word feeling both terrifying and absolutely right. "Yes, I'll marry you." His kiss was deep and thorough, a promise and a claiming all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I'm going to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy. That's my promise to you. I'm going to hold you to that." Over the next week, everything happened fast. Dylan and Leo delivered their evidence to the FBI. Thomas and Victor were both arrested on multiple charges, including racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The organizations they'd built began to crumble without their leadership. Dylan bought a house in a quiet suburb in Connecticut, far from the city and the life he'd lived. It wasn't as remote as the cabin, but it was safe, normal, perfect for raising a family. 3 months later, I went into labor on a snowy January morning. Dylan drove me to the hospital with white-knuckled determination, holding my hand through every contraction. Our daughter, Emma Grace Morrison, was born at 3:47 p.m., weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces. She had Dylan's dark hair and my nose, and when she opened her eyes for the first time, they were the same storm gray as her father's. Dylan cried when he held her, this dangerous man reduced to tears by 7 pounds of infant. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." 2 weeks later, in a small ceremony at the house with just Leo, Carlos, and Sarah as witnesses, Dylan and I got married. I wore a simple white dress that accommodated my post-pregnancy body, and Dylan wore a suit without a gun hidden beneath it for the first time in years. "I, Dylan Morrison, take you, Diana Reeves, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, and to never ever leave you again. I promise to be the man you deserve, the father our daughter deserves, every single day for the rest of my life." When he kissed me, Emma began to cry from Sarah's arms, as if protesting being left out of the moment. We broke apart laughing, and Dylan scooped our daughter up, holding her between us. "Welcome to the family," he whispered to her, then looked at me with such love, it made my heart ache. "Welcome home." 6 months later, we were settled into our new life. Dylan had started a legitimate financial consulting business, using his skills for good instead of crime. I'd gone back to school to finish my degree, taking online classes while caring for Emma. Carlos visited regularly, having become a sort of honorary uncle to our daughter. One evening, as I nursed Emma in the rocking chair Dylan had insisted on buying, he came in from his office and knelt beside us. "I have something to tell you," he said, his expression serious. My heart skipped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right." He pulled out his phone, showing me a news article. Thomas took a plea deal. He gave up everything, every contact, every dirty operation. Victor's organization is completely dismantled. It's over, Diana. It's really over. Relief washed through me so intensely I felt tears spring to my eyes. "We're safe. We're safe," he confirmed. "You, me, Emma, we can live a completely normal life now. No looking over our shoulders, no worrying about old enemies, just us." Emma finished nursing and I handed her to Dylan, watching as he held her against his shoulder, gently patting her back. This was what I'd dreamed of 7 years ago. Domestic bliss with the man I loved. I'd given up on it, convinced it was lost forever. But somehow through all the danger and betrayal and fear, we'd found our way back to each other. Not without scars, not without the weight of what we'd lost. But together, building something new and beautiful from the ashes of what had been destroyed. "I love you," I said. The words I'd been afraid to say too often, too freely, in case they gave him power to hurt me again. But Dylan had earned those words back, through patience and devotion, and the steady presence he'd maintained through Emma's birth and the chaos of new parenthood. He'd proven, day after day, that he meant his promises. "I love you too," he replied, Emma dozing on his shoulder. "Both of you. My whole world." Later that night, after Emma was asleep in her crib and we'd collapsed into bed exhausted as new parents always were, Dylan pulled me close. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Everything that happened, all the pain, the years we lost." I thought about it, really considered the question. I regret the time we lost. I regret that we had to go through so much to get here. But I don't regret Emma, and I don't regret giving us another chance. We're stronger now than we were at 23. We've been tested, and we survived. We did more than survive. We won. His hand found mine in the darkness, our fingers intertwining. Against Thomas, against Victor, against all the odds stacked against us. We won our happy ending. "It's not an ending," I corrected. "It's a beginning." "You're right." He kissed me softly. The beginning of the rest of our lives. As I drifted toward sleep, wrapped in Dylan's arms and listening to Emma's soft breathing through the baby monitor, I marveled at how far we'd come. From a spilled cup of coffee and a chance reunion to this moment. This perfect, peaceful, beautifully ordinary moment. 7 years ago, I'd loved a boy who'd broken my heart. Now I loved a man who'd fought through darkness to find his way back to me, who'd chosen us over everything else, who showed me every day that love could survive even the worst betrayal if both people were willing to fight for it. And fight for it we had. Through danger and fear and impossible odds, we'd fought our way back to each other. Now finally, we had our reward. A life built not on lies and danger, but on truth and trust, and the kind of love that only grows stronger through adversity. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined at 23. It was better because it was real, earned through tears and struggle and the refusal to give up on each other even when giving up would have been easier. "Dylan?" I whispered in the darkness. Thank you." "For what?" "For coming back. For fighting for us. For loving me enough to become a better man." His arms tightened around me. "Thank you for giving me the chance. For being brave enough to risk your heart again. For Emma. For this life. For everything." We fell asleep like that, tangled together, our daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, and our future stretching out before us bright and promising and finally safe. The darkness hadn't won after all. Love had, and that made all the difference.